Hello, everyone. Happy New Year, and welcome to a new season of Across STEM with YSI, where we'll be interviewing the speakers of STEM Quest 3.0, the biggest program we've ever hosted, along with MedExplore and STEM Up, which, as of today, January 10th, 2026, is still ongoing until next week. I'm your host, Amirali, and today's episode is all about what happens when data, neuroscience, storytelling, and more meet real world impact. Our guest today, the first guest of this new season of our podcast, is Carol Warren Ornelas, joining us from Mexico City. Carol recently presented at STEMQuest 3.0 about the role that youth play in neuroscience and the importance of their involvement in the field from a young age. An amazing session that talked about how young people really don't just learn science, they question science, connect science, and they transform it in creative, innovative ways. As Carol herself has said, science grows when curiosity is taken seriously and when more perspectives are invited into the conversation early on. So, who is Carol? At least beyond, what we learned from her STEMQuest talk, Carol is a data science and industrial engineering student at the Autonomous Technological Institute of Mexico in Mexico City, the national director of BrainBee Mexico, and the CEO and co-founder of Warren Nexus Group, which is a creative digital marketing agency focused on helping new ideas grow. What makes Carol's journey is especially interesting is how seamlessly she moves between worlds, from neuroscience education and international competitions to digital marketing, content creation, and youth-led social impact initiatives. Her work reminds us that STEM doesn't live in isolation. It lives in people, in communication, the way ideas spread, and how we connect those ideas to create beautiful things. Today, in this first episode of our new season of Across STEM with YSI, we'll talk about Carol's path through data science, neuroscience education, and creative leadership in her interests in the intersection of computation and biology, and what it means to build impact-driven projects as a young leader in Latin America. Carol, welcome to Across STEM with YSI. It is a pleasure to have you here. How are you doing today, and where are you joining us from?
I'm good, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm joining from Mexico City.
Nice. So my first question for you is, I learned about you through STEMQuest 3.0 and your recent talk at the program, and I'm curious to know what inspired you to give a talk specifically about the role of youth in neuroscience and why young voices matter in STEM.
I think that's something that I've noticed in at least the past year or something here in Mexico is that when you think of neuroscience, you usually think of, like as I was saying in STEM Quest, you think of people with PhDs, you think of people with a lot of more qualifications that you would have or that you would think of someone from a young age to have. And I found out that there was a very big gap that wasn't being filled. I'm not entirely sure how it's, for example, presented in the United States or in Europe or in other places. But I noticed that here, for example, in Mexico and throughout Latin America, there isn't really a lot of information about the youth that the role that the youth play in neuroscience. And especially when I was directing BrainBee, I found out that there was a lot of kids, very young kids, that were very interested in neuroscience and that had a lot of questions and a lot of things that were very valuable and that were, really interesting to look at. But they weren't really being taken seriously because of their age. Because, like I said, at least here, when you think of neuroscience, I remember that I was, knocking on so many doors to have judges, to have people that would help me, and they were like, "Ah, but you're too young." I think that I'm actually the youngest director from BrainBee, and I think that while it is a field that is very complicated in terms of knowledge, I believe that it's where people should be, well, the youth should be, because it's topics that are actually interesting to us, and not only interesting, but they actually directly affect us. And I found it really interesting that we weren't being taken as seriously as we should be. And I don't know, it was like very personal to me because it was something that was happening to me at the start.
Yeah, it's very interesting that around the world, I think you see this not just in Mexico, but because it's such a complex field, I think people underestimate how young minds, young people can, if they're exposed to neuroscience from a young age, how transformative that can be for them in the future and for the field as a whole. And it's nice that that you're help trying to change that because someone like me, I wish I was exposed to neuroscience earlier rather than later in high school. I just started to learn more about it. But yeah, young voices, young minds in neuroscience, I think is absolutely crucial. And I love that you're advocating for that. So you're studying data science and industrial engineering while leading multiple projects at the same time. I'm curious when someone asks you, so what do you actually do? How do you usually answer? Because you do so much.
Honestly, I always been moved by the idea that we shouldn't be stuck to one single thing. I remember that when I was choosing a major, everyone was like, "Ah, but you should choose just one." Like if you want to study medicine, it has to be medicine and then your specialization or biology, but it's only biology. And I found that that wasn't just for me. Like I had so many passions and I had so many interests that choosing just one would be betraying all the other ones. So I decided that I wanted to be like I like to call myself a Barbie because I literally do everything that I want to do. And it's very hard to answer the question whenever someone tells me, like, what do you do? It's like, I do a lot. Honestly, I do a lot. Mostly, I just mention Brain Bee, honestly, because I think it's the biggest accomplishment and it's something that I'm really proud of. But honestly, the goal itself is to find the intersection between medical data because as much as a lot of people think that there's no place for data science in medicine, it's where a lot of the data is actually being collected from. And I want to find the intersection between data science and medicine because I'm not studying medicine. So I think that's mostly what I would like to do in the long term, actually.
I mean, I think it's brilliant that you don't try to stick to one thing and you try to tend to all your hobbies and passions. So you're like a polymath in that sense, very multi-passionate. And
Yes,
that's
definitely.
something I think that is very important in the world today, to not specialize, but to have multiple passions and to create bridges between those passions too. So not to be confined by one thing or one label. I think
Yes.
that's kind of becoming old school, to be honest.
Yes.
We're living in an era, it's the modern Renaissance era, and it's very important that we don't, just dispel our other passions and stick to one thing when we can be all those things. And I love that you're doing that as well. So you founded War Nexus Group while still in school,
Yes.
which is honestly impressive. What pushed you to start creating your own projects instead of waiting for the right time?
Honestly, I think that life has a funny way of working. And I remember that the same thing. When everyone was talking about their dream jobs or what they wanted to do with their future, I didn't really see myself in like a particular company or like a particular place. And I always imagine, for example, with What a Nexus, I always imagine having like my own company or like my own place or however you want to call it that gave voices to young people and wasn't really focused exactly on one thing and could move between things. And I realized that while I don't particularly enjoy talking to a camera like on my own account for example, I really enjoy creating for others, trying to bridge those ideas that people have with actual real life. And I think that's something that really, well, I don't know how to say it, but like really made me like push me to start was realizing that there would never be a right time. Like I remember being like, maybe next year or when I start college or I'll do it next month. I don't know. And I kept pushing it and I just realized that if I didn't do it right now, I would probably never do it. And honestly, it was just a lot of impulsivity and being like, if not me, then who else? If not now, then when? And that was really my drive, honestly. I think everything that I've done so far, even talking at STEMQuest, was really just saying, if not me, then who? And it's something that I would like to have heard, or it's something that I would like to do, and opportunities that I would have liked to have in my time. So if I'm not doing that, then nobody else will. So I think you really just have to put yourself out there, honestly.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, it's a matter of, you know, not waiting for the right time because there is no right time.
Yeah,
Just do it,
definitely.
right? I mean, go for it. And I love that mentality that you have, of not waiting around for things to happen because, again, there's no perfect time. There will never be a perfect
Yes.
time, so there's no point in waiting. Just go for it. And I think that's something that a lot of youth, I think, they might be afraid of, but they need to understand that there's nothing to be afraid of. They're so young. Even older people, I mean, there's nothing to lose, right? Just go for it.
Yeah.
and that's very inspiring. So
Thank you.
let's talk about how you're the national director of Brain Bee Mexico, and you said you're the youngest one ever, which is again very impressive, working basically directly in neuroscience education. So how did you first get interested in neuroscience, and what does leading Brain Bee Mexico mean to you personally?
Honestly, I never thought that I would get interested in neuroscience. I remember being completely amazed by biology and medicine and just learning mostly genetics. I was really, really interested in that. And then one day, I remember that I was doing a volunteer work, exactly creating content for a STEM initiative. And they were asking about a lot of competitions that, international students could access. And I found out that International Brain Beat existed. And I remember that I was really honestly trying to compete, not really being on the volunteer or directing side. I just wanted to compete as a normal competitor would. And I realized, sadly, that Brain Bee Mexico, the first edition, closed about 10 years ago. And I realized as I was looking into it that we don't really have, you know, any competitions or biology competitions or STEM competitions aside from I think it's called Olimpiada Nacional or something like that. And it's very hard to get into it. You have to essentially just get into from elementary school. It's a long process. And I realized that if I was looking for competitions, there was probably a lot of other guys and kids and a lot of people that were looking for competitions and couldn't find any. And I took it upon myself to investigate if the Brain Bee Mexico was actually open here or if it has closed. And I remember just, deciding in one moment that I was gonna send an email to the international director. And I was like, hey, so do you guys are taking any volunteers or anything? And he told me, no, but if you want, you can open it. And I remember that I was so scared because I was like, how am I gonna do this all by myself? And, realizing that people were actually interested and that I wasn't gonna have like, 5 kids in the competition, but I actually ended up having 30 and saying, like, okay, so there's 30 kids that are actually interested, are enjoying this, are studying for this. Like that drive was very personal to me because I remembered like how I felt when I wanted to compete and being like, dang, there's no competition here. And, bringing that opportunity to the kids was like, honestly, so heartwarming in a way. And as I was learning about International Brain Bee, I was also going through some health issues, neurological health issues. And I remember that aside from being scared of, what could mean having those issues, I was very curious. I was asking my doctor, like, why does that happen? And what does that mean? And why does it affect me? And I was just so curious, and that curiosity kept growing over and over. And I remember that it just reached the point that I would always be reading, papers and investigations and trying to look for courses to learn more, or actually trying to go into, surgeries or that kind of stuff just to learn because it was really interesting, how so many little things and so many little parts of our brain make up all of our personality, so many personality traits, all this, everything. And I was just really amazed by how one organ can create everything that we know, even how we perceive reality. And I think that those two things really matched perfectly and just gave me the drive to honestly continue with that. So Brain Bee is something that I really hold close to my heart up to this day.
That's fantastic. So it really fueled your love for neuroscience. And also, it's a great example of if not me, who else? You just reached out to
Exactly.
them, and now you're the director. So that's a pretty wonderful story. Um, Now, a lot of your work from Vax Todos Jóvenes, I hope I pronounced that correctly. I'm still working on my
Yes.
Spanish to
No, it's
the
good. Don't worry.
it's good. Okay, I'll take it. To the kaleidoscope. They center around youth, culture, and social impact. So, how did these experiences shape the way you think about leadership and responsibility in STEM?
Honestly, I think, well, I used to think that, for example, the kaleidoscope and Va por Todos was really not related to STEM, or I thought that it had nothing to do with what I ended up doing or what I'm doing right now. But with time, I think I realized that everything is just little breaks in your path, I could say. And I remember that, for example, in the kaleidoscope, I was also very scared because I was like, I've never created content before. Like, I've never taken content creation seriously. It was just like silly little videos of me. And I've never really taken it as I'm actually delivering a message or I'm actually doing something that people will see and will, like actually take into account. And I remember that I went from just doing silly little videos and being like, I just something that I'm gonna see or my friends are gonna see, to actually having like that realization of this is something that people will see. And for example, with Va por Todos, it was mostly about politics. So it was like, this is something that voters will see, that will actually motivate people to vote, because that was the whole point. It was actually to bring awareness about that. And I was like, I have to find the right words and the right phrases to connect with youth so that it wasn't, like for adults, because that's something that happens a lot. When you see a lot of the media that we consume, we think like, this is for old people, or this is not for me, this is not connecting with me. And I was like, I have to find that way. And honestly, having to step up in those leadership positions and being like, okay, I am in charge and I have to decide what goes out and what doesn't, and how it's said and why it matters. It actually changed from being just like, yeah, like, this is just for me, to actually realizing the impact that one can have and the responsibility up to a point that I was having at that moment. And I really don't think that it made me more mature or take like a role of leadership that I didn't have to take, but it made me realize how important youth leaders are, because you can't expect, like the youth to communicate in the same way that other generations do, or accept it the same way that other generations do. So it was a bit of a challenge, but it really helped me, have the drive to do a lot of leadership positions that I do right now.
That's wonderful. So it really made you realize the power that youth have,
Yes,
and that perhaps inspired you to do talks like the one that you had at STEMQuest. And I think it's something that more people should realize. And I think we, for now, at least as youth ourselves, we should be advocating more for it as well. Especially in today's world where youth have a lot more access to opportunities from a younger age, to education,
exactly.
to ton of other things, to also become leaders from a young age. So I think it's absolutely imperative. And there's something about youth, their energy, their curiosity, their creativity, everything. It can bring something to the world that I think, no disrespect to older people, but it's just something that youth can do better, you know?
Yeah, no, it's definitely a different kind of point of view that the youth just has.
Exactly. Yeah, just naturally. So that's just a natural thing that you can see across the world, no matter what country you're in. Now, let's move on to talking about your interest in computation and biology. So you've talked about really being drawn to the intersection of computation and biology, especially biostatistics and genomic data.
Yes.
What excites you more about that space right now?
Honestly, I'm really drawn to predictive medicine. I've seen a lot of tests that you can do that tell you, like the probability that you develop, I don't know, cancer or different types of cancer, or, I've seen a lot also with your diet, what you should eat and what you shouldn't eat, and based on reactions and all that. And I find it really interesting because that mixed with, I also saw the first, I think, gen edited baby that got a disease cured. I find it really interesting how we're not just switching completely to computing and, what was expected a lot of years ago with robots and cyborgs and everything, but we are at that intersection between, for example, data and between medicine, and how it can help us actually not only develop better, for example, habits in case of predictive medicine, but also be more aware of the risks that we have. Because I remember that I did a presentation about also predictive medicine, and we were talking about how important it is that you could get access to that. Because I don't know exactly, for example, the prices in Europe and in other places, but here it's very expensive. It's not something that, for example, anyone can access. And I really think and I really hope that it becomes accessible in one day, so that people can actually have more information about their backgrounds and their possible risk factors and health factors. And I'm really interested in that. I'm also really interested in editing. Sorry, my
Mhm.
English is lacking a bit,
No, no, you're
but
fine.
I find it really, really interesting. And all the data that collects, for example, in biomedical devices, and how that can be also predictive and, for example, in probability, that it's something that I'm seeing in college right now. And I really love that intersection because, again, I think that they're not completely different from each other. And in the very near future, they're going to be completely dependent one or on another. And I'm actually really interested in that.
Yeah, it's a very fascinating field. I mean, it could unlock the cures for so many diseases, like as you said, with the baby who was gene edited and cured of a disease. It's just, I mean, there are problems. Obviously, there's ethics involved. There's
Yes,
the prices and accessibility, which will take a while to make more accessible. But I think it's very exciting to see how this intersection between computation, technology, biology, it's all creating things that we haven't seen before and leading to new solutions, new therapies that we probably would only see in sci-fi.
definitely.
So it's an exciting field, and it's something I want to get involved in. I know you're very fascinated by it yourself, and
Yes,
I'm excited to see what happens in the next 5, 10 years in
definitely.
the field. Yeah, and that's one of the beauties also of a cross field kind of intersection. You know, when you see um, something like computation and biology, medicine, and who knows, engineering, whatever, they when they mix together, when you combine their powers, it can lead to incredible stuff.
Yeah, definitely. I see it a lot with computing and biology, and I think we shouldn't be afraid of that intersection. Of course, with precautions, but I think it's really interesting and we could get a lot of good things out of it.
Definitely, if following the ethics and taking precautionary measures, then it can be something beautiful.
Yes,
So,
definitely.
looking ahead, how do you think data science can change the way we understand health, biology, or even disease prevention, particularly in regions like Latin America?
Honestly, I really hope that it's more talked and discussed here in Latin America. But I really do believe that with a lot of the studies that we have right now, and for example, in neuroscience, we have a Institute of Neuroscience, I think it's called, and
Mm,
they offer like more accessible prices for a lot of neuro-related studies. And I really love how data analytics is being more accepted in medicine and how, for example, even in diagnosis, it's very easier, it's a lot easier, sorry, to, for example, compare results in blood test and all of that. And how it's not taking jobs away from doctors, but it's not only helping them for their job to be easier, but it's also helping the patient to receive
mm,
diagnosis and treatment faster than it would be normally. And I think that, well, I hope so, that in the near future, data is gonna, really help these patients, especially with, for example, chronic diseases or rare diseases mostly, that something that we usually take years to find a diagnosis or a treatment would become a lot faster based on statistics, based on probability, on data, on tendencies, all of that, which is something that can only be found or be acquired by data analysis, because if not, it would have taken a lot less time to find cures and to find even names for diseases. For example, I see it a lot with POTS, I think it's called in English, and that, for example, doctors don't really find that diagnosis after later in life because they don't do the right test or they don't have the right information or they can't do the right yes, comparison, sorry. And I think that, well, I hope that it really does help and help boost, all these health benefits and benefits for the patients, which at the end of the day is really what matters the most. And also, for example, on investigation, which is something that I think anyone that has worked in a lab hates data processing, and it's the most tedious part. And I see all these amazing tools that are being developed, and I see all of this data processing and data visualization. And that gives me hope that, for example, papers are easier to understand or they can be published faster, which would allow for more investigation to happen faster also. So I really hope that it's not only left as something that doesn't belong in medicine, but it's actually accepted as something that could work wonderfully with investigation, with even drug development, biomedical development, and I really love that actually.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, data science itself is such a fascinating, I don't even want to say field, it's like a world. And
Yeah.
with AI too,
Yes,
the stuff that
definitely.
AI is doing in with data science. I mean, I saw this instance of an AI compiling research papers, like thousands and thousands of them from the past couple decades, and then compiling all that information together, extracting all the data, and then producing some findings itself based on all that data from those thousands of research papers. Like it was an unimaginable amount of data.
Yeah.
So I think with AI too, that's one of the things that AI can do so well that, I mean, the average or humans in general cannot do. Um,
Yeah.
so I think we should use that to our advantage as well because there's so much insight that data can provide us that can really revolutionize scientific fields and, I mean, other fields as well and lead to new innovations that could not be possible before.
Yeah, definitely. Or that we wouldn't have even thought about.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So I want to talk about your marketing and communication. I mean, that's also an area that you've been involved in. So you specialize in content creation and organic growth on social media. What do you think communication is such a powerful and sometimes underestimated part of science and education?
I'm not entirely sure like when it shifted, but I would say that before the last 5 years, science was something that was, I wouldn't say unattainable for young people, but it was definitely something that you had to grow a bit more to be able
Hmm.
to understand and to be able to actually comprehend what was going on. And I really love that, this generation, or at least our generation, is really focused on, for example, content creation that speaks about science or that breaks down complex, information that would otherwise be very hard to understand for the youth, or that focuses on teaching, I don't know, elementary school kids, the, I don't know, the third law of Newton or something like that. That's something that makes it a lot easier for kids to understand because I believe that science shouldn't be complex or it shouldn't be something that you have to know a lot of a topic to know or to learn even. Because I believe that sometimes you see a topic, for example, in neuroscience, and you think this is something that I first need to learn about anatomy, and then I need to learn about molecules, and then it's chemistry, and then it's all these steps, and you would think that it's very tedious, or at least I would think that it's very tedious. And sometimes I think that scientists, well, at least advanced scientists, forget that communication for the youth and communication just generally can really, like get rid of a breach, or sorry, a gap actually that exists between like a communication barrier. Because it's not even in a lot of stances about, for example, languages. It's the language that science uses, or for example, math, physics, that's very complex and is very different to our everyday slang, I would say. And I found that, you don't really have to complicate it that much. It's easier if you just break it down and you actually turn it into, well, into turn it into, stuff that it's easier to understand. And I see it a lot on social media and TikTok. I follow a lot of influencers that are actually, just explaining, I don't know, a paper that they read that is actually 28 pages long in a 1 minute video, and I think that sometimes scientists and even us sometimes we forget how important it is to, realize who our audience is and realize who the people that will see the videos, the, post and everything, even on LinkedIn, for example, and who is actually our audience and why communication and, actually understanding what they know, what they don't know, and the way they communicate, the way they understand, it's very important because if not, we're just creating more and more gaps that are really unnecessary and that are really easy to get rid of if you just find the right words and find the right expressions and everything.
Definitely. I think, I mean, I'm not the biggest advocate for social media myself, but when I see scientific educational content on it and how people explain things with visuals and in, short videos that summarizes something like you said, a 28-page paper, it's, I think, very useful in that sense because it, first of all, increases access to information. It's very accessible. You don't have to go find it yourself. It might just show up in your feed. and
Yes.
you learn something that you might not even learn in, I don't know, your lectures or something. So, because a lot of the information that is presented on social media, a lot of it is some very innovative new studies or new therapies, whatever it is. And it's nice to be up to date about these things and to learn about them and to learn about the mechanisms of them. So, in that sense, I think it's a very powerful tool. And again, just that accessibility thing about how younger people through just social media can have access to all this
Yes.
wonderful information. It's really a powerful tool, and I think it should be used like that more. Um, so yeah, I think communication, social media, all this is just absolutely crucial for science, especially in the
Yes.
age that we're living in. So it's something that I don't think should be um it's something I think it faces a lot of criticism, but I don't think it should because like it's increasing accessibility to information so much, and it's also making science more interesting because it's a lot of the time, I mean, how I see it too is it's more interesting than reading like a bland paper. You get bored
Yeah.
after a while, but then if you see someone explaining it on social media, a lot of the time it's very fascinating, it's engaging, and then that makes you want to go and actually read about it more and
Yes,
research about it
definitely.
yourself. Yeah. Um, so it's a very powerful tool.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah. So from your experience, what do you think about how digital platforms can be used well to make STEM more accessible without oversimplifying it necessarily?
I think it's a, well, I am also not the biggest advocate for a lot of social media usage. I
Mhm.
think it's like, I don't know if you guys also have that expression, but I, here in Mexico, we say, es un arma de doble filo, it's a double-edged sword. It can go very well, or it can go very wrong.
Yes,
You have like, you have to find that balance. But I
definitely.
think that, platforms, if used correctly and if not shifted from this educational content, I think they're really a really good place for the youth to start because right now I see that kids as young as, I don't know, 10 years old have TikTok, they have Instagram, they have all this social media, and they can either consume content that doesn't really bring any information, but not only that, but it also just brings like bad information or bad influence to them. And I think I would rather, for example, have a little brother or a little sister be more interested in science, even if it's a bit oversimplified for their age. But I think that it really does depend on the type of audience that well, is the one that you're reaching, because we see it with attention spans. You have to find the correct amount of information that keeps your viewer engaged so that they don't scroll away and they just get lost. But you can also be just like, ah, yes, this happens and then this happens, because then all the information and all the in between, or the black box, as we call it in computer, is just lost. I think I would say it's a challenge for STEM creators, but it does present like a possibility to become, well, for STEM to become more accessible for the youth. And it makes me really, well, I'm gonna say something, but it makes me really sad to see that a lot of the scientific content that is out there, it's just seen as something that is for older people or people that are already interested in science, when I think that it should be for exactly those who are not interested in science. It
Hmm.
should be for those who have no clue what it's being talked about and have no clue what's going on and have no clue, or what I say, it's always the kids that said biology isn't for me, or I'm not the science type, or I'm not the math type. Because I think that those are the ones that would actually love it if they got the time to be introduced to it and to actually understand it. But I think it's a powerful tool. As much as I hate to admit it, we're not gonna stop using social media. We're probably gonna use it more and be a bit more dependent on it. So I think it's really important that there's people out there that are actually taking the time to make STEM accessible and make actual, interesting videos, so that our kids and the future generations are not completely overrun by all of this brain rot that I see on TikTok and everything. But yeah, I think the problem starts with, there's very few, well, not very few, but there's fewer STEM content creator than there is of other kind of content. And I think that that's the main issue, but I really do believe that it's something that could actually become very, very good for the STEM accessibility.
For sure, for sure. And that the point you brought up about how it should be targeted more towards making people who don't know much about science, make them more interested in science, to capture their attention. Because if you're already interested in science, I mean, you're probably doing research on your own and
Yeah.
things, but to capture the attention of people who who may not research science or read about new advancements in scientific
Hmm.
fields. It's different that way because you get more involvement in the field, especially from younger people, um, and in that sense, it's very powerful. So again, I mean, yeah, we do have that saying too, the double-edged sword of social
Yeah.
media. Hopefully it's one side of that sword, and that side is the one where you get to learn and you get to discover and maybe discover new passions. I mean, um, in that sense it can be incredibly powerful, and I hope that rather than watching stuff that are not very valuable or don't you don't learn much from them, I hope to see more science creators especially target people who don't know much about science and get them
Yeah.
interested in science. So that's something that can be life changing for some, actually. Um, this brings me to my next question, and it's about your leadership, actually, and your adaptability. So you've worked both online and in very people-centered spaces. So online, of course, you've done content creation and other things, and then in-person spaces, you've been to events, competitions, community initiatives. And I wonder, how do you adapt your leadership style across these different environments?
Honestly, I would say that I try to keep it the same way. Honestly, for me at least, it's a bit harder to to adapt to in-person events because online you can just, send 1,000 messages or be like, if you guys don't work, I'm gonna kick you out of this initiative. And it's easier in that way than when you're working with actual in-person events because you can't really do much to the people that are in your team, for example. Uh, in Brainbeat, it happened to me that I had really few volunteers. So I was like, I need you to actually do this because if you don't do this, then this whole thing is gonna fall apart and it's gonna blow up on our faces. And online, it was just like, okay, if you don't create the content that I ask, I can just do it myself or I can find someone else to do it. So it's been a ride, I would say. It's been a bit hard. I think I try to keep it the same way in the sense that I consider myself to be a soft leader in the sense that I really just try to be as nice as I can be because I don't really believe that, being the stern type gets you anywhere. I think that just pushing people not to their limit, but actually to their best version and to do something that they actually like, it's what actually makes a good leader. So I would say that I try to keep it the same. I honestly don't really think I adapt that much. Well, I don't change that much from one to another. But yeah, I think that I might be a bit more demanding when it comes to in-person events, mostly because, like the roles that are already established. But I always try to, have that drive to actually motivate and being like, this is why we do the thing. It's not, the goal is not to have the best event or the goal is not to have, like the end thing. It's actually the motive or the reason that behind the event, why we're doing this.
Certainly, yeah. And I do resonate with that as well. I mean, I think it's good to be a leader who keeps people accountable and make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to do to contribute to whatever you're leading. But at the same time, it's I think good to be encouraging, not to be just
Yes, definitely.
a leader who no one really likes and who just wants to be harsh on people and very stern and serious. It's nice to be a leader who keeps people accountable but encourages them and also is like friends with them. They're nice and they're
Exactly.
right. Yeah, that's I think it's important as a leader to be friendly because then people will
Exactly.
cooperate with you. They will actually want to work with you, and that's the one of the
Yes.
most important things about being a leader. So yeah, I resonate with that a lot. And for me too, I mean, whether it's online or in person, not it's not very different, I would say,
Hmm.
my leadership style, but uh, of course, just based on the nature of online initiatives or communities and in-person ones, I do adapt certain things based on those differences. Um, and that just comes naturally, I think. I don't think about it
Yeah.
too much. It just comes naturally. I'm sure you can relate as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Now, a quick question about just a challenge that you think in your life could be a recent one, could be from the past. Um, what's been a challenge that really has pushed you to grow, either creatively or academically or as a leader in any way?
Honestly, there's been a lot, but I would say that, having having no opportunities in fields that I liked and realizing that not only were there any opportunities for, like the youth, but particularly for girls, and realizing that there was no one that's gonna make, a path for me
Mhm.
or create spaces for me, and actually being called too young and too dumb for a program that was here in Mexico, and being said that I wasn't really enough for that space. Really, instead of pushing me down, I think it actually pushed me to be like, you know what, I'm gonna show you that I am actually good enough. And not only that, but I'm gonna show you how there's a lot of people that probably feel that way, or were told that they weren't good enough, and how not only are they good enough, but they're actually a lot better than what you think they are. And I remember that I was so sad that I didn't get this opportunity, and I was like, okay, then I'm gonna find another one. And then there wasn't another one. And I was like, if I'm gonna try again and I'm gonna get like, completely disregarded and being called that I'm not smart enough, I was like, you know what? I'm actually gonna become so obnoxiously smart and so obnoxiously good at this that I'm gonna show, like this person how actually good it is. And it also happened to me, like in a past relationship, that this guy was like, my career is a lot better than yours, and your career is not really that important. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna show this guy how important my career is and how it actually relevant it is. And yeah, honestly, I think just doing things for yourself, and even if I don't want to say that it's toxic, but if you think that if you're like, okay, I'm gonna show this person how they were wrong and how I'm actually right and I'm gonna prove them wrong, it's a really good motivation and it really pushes you to grow in a lot of ways that you wouldn't expect to grow,
Exactly,
honestly.
exactly. Yeah, it does.
But yeah, I would
Sure.
say those two moments were the ones that I can think of.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it pushes you to, it motivates you to
Yeah.
prove them wrong, to show that you're not what they think you are. And I think that's something that I respect a lot. And I think when like I don't personally I don't take it seriously when someone criticizes me or wants to
Hmm.
downplay anything that I've done. But one hand of me also is like, it fires up. It wants me to prove them wrong, show them that's not the case, no, and that just makes me grow. So they say, I mean, someone's maybe hates in some ways is
Yeah.
actually something that fuels your growth. So they might
Yeah,
think,
definitely.
making you, they're downplaying the stuff you've done, they're making you seem small or insignificant, but then what do you know? That just leads to your growth and uh, it turns you into someone who, like you said, like for you, you want to
Yeah.
become obnoxiously smart.
Yeah.
And I think that's a very, very powerful feel that could be ignited in you. Um, so yeah, thank you for sharing about that. Now I'm curious about what the future holds for you, or at least what you think the future holds for you. So over the next few years, where do you see yourself focusing most? Data science, biology, entrepreneurship, science communication, or a mix of everything?
Honestly, I really hope that it's a mix of everything. Um, mostly data science, applied to biology, to medicine, and all that, to health especially. Well, obviously, especially to neuro, because that was mostly the reason why I started data science. I would admit that. But I see myself honestly participating in everything that I can and trying to create as many spaces and opportunities for people and for kids like me that, see themselves in spaces that, well, see themselves in spaces that don't really have that representation. So I really hope that, for example, Brain Bee keeps growing and we reach nationwide, and it's not only in my state, which is something that I'm working on. I also hope that I get over the fear of being on camera and actually, launch and make videos about STEM related topics that I think are interesting. And yeah, I honestly think that it's gonna be a mix of both, well, everything actually. Um, I don't really know what the future holds because I don't think I ever do because life just when you think that you actually have everything in control, life is just like, yeah, you don't actually, and just
Yeah.
changes everything, but it's always for the better. But I really hope that I can continue, doing everything and, like I say, everything all at once. But yeah, I really hope it's a mix. I think I would like to go a bit into investigation, but we'll see.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think, I mean, it's hard to tell now where you want to be or to predict where you're going to be in the next, even tomorrow.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it's nice to have goals and to see where you would want to be and to set hard deadlines for yourself to achieve those goals. That's something I tried doing, but yeah, I mean, especially with all the stuff that you're doing at the same time, I can imagine that you do want to do all of them, a mix of everything.
Yeah.
So I was expecting that response, honestly. Now, long term, what kind of impact do you hope your work will have on STEM education and youth leadership in Mexico and the broader Latin America and beyond in the whole world, really?
I honestly just I wouldn't say that I have like an idea of the impact that I would like to have, mostly because I think that a lot of the time I don't realize the impact that I have right now. But I would definitely like for, especially girls, because it's something that really hits close, but for girls to be able to see me or see, like um, a role model in a way, that they see me and they actually think like this is something that I would like to do. And I will continue to be a voice of those who have no clue what to do with their lives and just like doing a lot of things all at once. And I really believe that, well, I really hope actually that, you know, kids see me or the youth sees me and they're like, okay, if she could do it and she could balance so many things and do so many different things, then I can do it too. Um, but yeah, I really hope that I have some impact. I'm not sure if it's gonna be, nationwide or Latin America wide. I hope it is. I hope that Brain Bee also expands to Colombia because it's also a part that there isn't any competitions, but of course, there is people that are interested. Of course, there is people that, want to get into the world of science. Same with third world countries, Cuba, Venezuela, Puerto Rico, all of these places that aren't really represented in science, but they have so much talent and so many kids that are actually eager to learn and to get involved and all that. I think that the really long term, like really long term, would be to actually have initiatives in all these places and actually have, kids that are actually motivated because of me or because of initiatives that I start. I think that would be like the really long term goal, I would say.
Mm. I love that mindset, honestly. It's so unique, being a role model or striving to be a role model for others, for people younger than you, even older than you, and to have people look up to you and to learn from the stuff that you've done. And the stuff that you're doing can really have a transformative impact on their life and their careers. So I hope that all your initiatives, stuff like BrainBee, also expands to other places like Colombia, as you
Thank
said.
you.
And I'm rooting for you. I think I mean, you're very young, you're just at the start. So I don't know, in the next even couple of years, I can't imagine how much more you're going to achieve and how much more all the stuff you're doing and working on is going to grow and expand and how many more people it will impact. And I really hope that we have more people like you in STEM and in other fields. And as you said, you want to be a role model, especially for girls, to get more girls involved in STEM as well. And that is very important because still in, although it's improving in much of the world, especially in third world countries, there's still a lot
Yes.
of gender inequality and girls have less access to opportunities or sometimes denied just because of their sex. And I think it's absolutely crucial to have leaders like you who
Oh,
advocate
thank you.
for it, who are role models for them, and who provide these opportunities to get girls and other people involved in STEM fields from a young age. So keep up what you're doing. It's honestly very impressive, very inspiring,
Thank you.
and I'm excited to see how much you grow as a person, how much all of the stuff you do grows as well, and has an impact on people in Mexico and Latin America and globally, really.
No, thank you so much for your kind words. That they actually mean a lot more than you think.
Glad to hear that. Now, a lot of students feel pressured to pick one identity. We talked about this before, but they feel pressured to specialize in something, to become a scientist, a marketer, a leader, creative, anything, and then drop the rest. So, what advice would you give to young people trying to balance multiple passions without burning out?
I would say, and I think it's such a cliche, honestly, advice, but be delusional. Honestly, if you have a dream and you are like, I want to do this, but I want to do that, but they have nothing to do with each other, be delusional and just have hope that either they'll connect somewhere along the way or they will never connect, but you will follow both dreams for whatever reason. And there really isn't, like any reason that I can think of as to why you shouldn't follow that dream and that passion. And I really hate that we have we have normalized how, you have to focus on one thing and everything just falls into the second place or is just completely dropped and ignored and is like later in life I can, figure it out and I'll just take it back and you won't, honestly.
Hmm.
So honestly, I would just say if you have so many passions and you have so many interests, you have them for a reason, honestly. Always put yourself first, definitely, because health comes first. And if you're not okay, then nothing else will be okay and you won't be able to pull it all off. But be delusional, honestly. If you can, if you believe that you can, you will. Believe me. It does. I have no clue why it works, but believe that it will and have very big dreams and be as delusional as you can and be like, I'm one day I'm gonna be this and that, and you will be this and that for some reason. And honestly, keep in mind why you're doing that. It's never as to what the goal is the why you're doing that. Like what motivates you? Why do you like that? Why do you want that? That's the biggest advice that I would give them.
Definitely, definitely. So be delusional actually is
Yeah.
it's one of the things I have on my Instagram bio. It's something I started believing in it a lot myself.
Yes.
Very recently actually, I'm like, really don't be normal, be delusional,
Yeah.
really. Just be crazy about what you're pursuing, be crazy about your goals, about where you're going in life, and you know, just take it to heart and really strive for it passionately. Like you don't have to follow a normal path that a lot of other people have followed.
Yes.
You know, uh, each person has a unique path and create a kind of environment, a life for yourself that makes you excited when you wake up in the morning. It's not a chore.
Hmm.
Living or pursuing your goals. It's not a chore. It should be something that makes you happy. It's something that you look forward to doing. It excites you. So yeah, be delusional. Honestly, that's
Definitely.
a good piece of advice you gave because yeah, being normal is boring and being delusional, I mean in a good way, is
Yes.
it can lead to special things.
No, and because I always say that you already have the no. Like the worst case scenario, you don't make it. Like that's the worst case scenario. And it's something that you already have if you don't do it. So you're just getting like a 50% positive probability that it actually works out. If
Exactly. And
that's all.
that's all. You live once, right? You have
Definitely.
one chance, so make the most out of it. You have nothing to lose,
Exactly. Like you already have the no, so why not go look for the yes
right?
and just be
Yeah.
delusional?
Be delusional for sure. So, from your perspective, what role do youth play in shaping the future of STEM and innovation globally?
Well, I think that they are the main role. Honestly, they are the creators of science itself and, whatever the way that it evolves and the way and the questions that are being asked, they are the ones that decide. I think that a lot of people think that they aren't mature enough or that they just don't know what questions to ask or how to ask them. But honestly, at the end of the day, they are the ones that are going to live in the future, and they are the ones that are going to have to deal with the issues that not answering these questions will have. I see it a lot with mental health that I see a lot of even doctors being like, but there doesn't need we don't need any more investigation about ADHD, for example. And then you see the youth being like, but I want to know why I feel this way, or why this happens to me, or any new drugs that aren't really affecting me the way that the ones that exist do. And I think that they really should be taken seriously because they are asking the questions that are actually relevant and the questions that we care about because, we don't really care about, the effects of a drug that it's not even allowed anymore have on the, I don't know, 50-year-old brain. We want to know why, how these drugs affects us or why we feel this way or why this happens to us. And I think that well, they are the one that should decide, what the path that STEM follows and the path that, for example, medicine follows, and the way that it evolves is, it's what's going to be left to us. It's not going to be for the older generations. It's actually going to be, just for us when we grow older.
Certainly, certainly. And I think the questions, the curiosity of youth is unrivaled. I mean, the questions they ask are just so um they're questions that I don't think adults would be able to come up with, to be honest. Like
Exactly.
there's something about the questions that kids ask that I mean, I've seen like an adult, a professor, very knowledgeable person giving a presentation, and a kid asks them a question, and they really had to think about it and
Yeah,
couldn't come up with a definite answer. So they ask very thought-provoking questions that I think can, first of all, it shows a curiosity, and it can also lead to things, to new discoveries that can transform science. I mean, just the power of youth in science is very underestimated, and I hope
definitely.
that will change. And I'm glad that you're advocating for that change, um, which I hope to see happen fast sooner than later,
Yeah.
honestly, because I think it's nothing but beneficial to science.
Yeah, definitely. They
Yeah.
bring new perspectives.
Definitely, yeah. New perspectives that, again, older people might not have. Um,
Yeah.
no respect, no disrespect to them. So just putting that out there. Anyway, now let's conclude with a STEM fun fact. Now, one of the key elements, one of the most important things about our podcast across STEM with YSI is where our speakers come from and your culture. So we have speakers from a variety of countries and backgrounds and cultures, and that's what makes this podcast so special. It's one of the things that makes it so special. So to wrap up, I want you to share a fun fact about STEM in Mexico. Could be about anything.
Okay, that's a really good question. Oh my God. Well, one fun fact that I could think of, which isn't really that big of a fun fact, but it's that we have a lot, and I mean a lot, of robotic teams in the first competition, and all that. We have a large number, and even in one school, there's up to five robotic teams for the same competition,
Oh my God, wow.
which is something that I found really interesting when I learned that. And another fun fact would be that, oh my God, that's a really hard question. I would say that we have a very low interest in neurosurgery, but we have a very high interest in cardiovascular surgery for some reason.
Interesting.
That's those are like the fun facts that I could think of.
Okay. No, I mean they're great fun facts. First of all, the robotics one. I didn't know robotics was such a huge thing in Mexico.
Yeah,
I mean, I've heard about how huge it is in Japan, for instance. I know it's massive, their robotic competitions and schools have multiple teams, but it's really fascinating to see how that's the case in Mexico as well. Like
yeah,
five teams from one school is
yeah,
ridiculous. And yeah, I mean, for the other fun fact you mentioned, maybe it comes down to just how many people have cardiovascular disease versus neurological disease. I don't know, because I'm
there's a
sure
lot.
neuroscience, yeah, I'm sure neuroscience is huge in Mexico, as it is in a lot of other places. But yeah, it's interesting to learn just how these things differ between countries and how each country has like its own unique set of um, norms and traditions and even fun facts in STEM. I love learning about it personally, and I'm glad that as part of this podcast, we're able to share about it uh, and hear from people who come from these countries. So thank you for sharing that.
Ah, thank you for making me think.
So Carol, wow, I learned so much from you today, honestly, in this 1 hour conversation. And I do hate to say that brings us to the end of today's episode of Across Time with YSI, but honestly, thank you so much. I mean, this is the first episode of this new season where we interview our brilliant STEM Quest speakers like you, and it's also the first one of 2026. So
Yeah,
again, a massive thank you to you, Carol, for joining us and sharing such a thoughtful and multi-dimensional journey that you've had so far, from leading neuroscience education initiatives like Be Mexico to building creative digital strategies through War Nexus Group and exploring how data and biology intersect and also presenting for us at STEM Quest 3.0. I think, Carol, your story really shows us that STEM thrives when it is truly human and authentic, when it is creative and community driven. So, what really stands out is how intentionally you approach impact, not just by asking, what can I build, but who does this help and how do people connect to it? That mindset is exactly what the future of STEM needs. Carol, before we wrap up, is there anything else you'd like to leave our audience with? Maybe a message for students who are still figuring out where they belong in STEM?
honestly, I would just say that you have time. Believe me, you have time, and there's no need to rush to try and find your place because you'll just find it eventually, and you have time.
Definitely. You'll naturally find it. And you have nothing to lose. Take risks,
Exactly.
go for what you want to do, and don't wait again for the perfect time. It simply does not exist.
Definitely.
Well, Carol, thank you so much. Muchas gracias. Buenas noches. And I hope to have you back for another episode in the near
Would
future.
love that.
Yeah, and to see how you've grown and how your all the initiatives that you lead have grown and the impact that they've had as well. So thank you so much, and hope to talk to you soon again.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, and it was really wonderful to talk to you. And your Spanish is really good, actually.
No way. Okay, I'll take that. Of course, I'm still trying to work on it, but for now, I'll
No,
take
but
that.
it's
Thank you.
really good.
Gracias, gracias. All right, take care. See you soon.
See you soon. Thank you.